Good afternoon. Welcome to Lunch with Books. My name is Sean. I'm here to introduce a great West Virginia artist. Bob Villamagna is the retired assistant professor of art and the director of Nutting Gallery at West Liberty University. Working primarily in assemblage, collages, and mixed media art, he was named the 2016 West Virginia Artist of the Year. Here is Bob Villamagna.
Hi. How am I starting here? Am I answering questions? Am I just saying hello? And as you notice, I have a mask, right? Okay, so I'm going to take my mask off, okay? Because I don't really care about these other people that are around me, and they don't seem like they're caring anything. So we're good. Okay. So I'm here to talk. So wow, this is like I should have had some practice. And I was hoping that Sean would ask me some questions or somehow get this thing whole started. Sean, is that going to happen, or do I just have to fly here?
Tell us about finance.
Okay, all right, thank you. So I'm here to talk to you about Shrine for a Mill Rat, which is right here. Okay, and Shrine for a Mill Rat was created 2 years ago. And it was created for an exhibition at Contemporary Craft in Pittsburgh, which at that time was located in a strip district and recently moved to Lawrenceville. They haven't officially opened yet. But anyway, it was for an exhibition there called Transformation 10. And they do this exhibition every 2 years for the Raphael Prize. Raphael was the founder of Contemporary Craft. So people applied from all over the world for this particular exhibition, which the subject changes every 2 years. But at this time, it was contemporary work in found materials, which means non-traditional art materials, such as found objects or metal, glass, whatever, any kind of found materials. And so I was fortunate enough to get selected and be one of the artists. And once I was selected based on a portfolio of my work, I could create a piece about transformation. And so I decided to do this rat, and the transformation that it kind of represents is me, because I worked in a steel mill, actually Weirton Steel, for 13 years, and during that time, there's a sort of a derogatory term that pops up called mill rat. Okay, but it's embraced. I mean, anybody that works in the mill would usually refer to themselves as a mill rat. And one particular day when I was in the mill, and I wasn't really too happy to be there. I always wanted to work in some type of creative endeavor, and being in the mill, the mills and factories are not conducive to creativity. That's not the place for it. And so I kept trying to think, not that I was better than my coworkers or anything, but I was just unhappy there, and I wanted to get out. And one day I shared with one of my coworkers on a construction labor gang, and I said, I'm going to get out of here one of these days. I'm going to try to get out, and he replied, he says, you're not going any place. You're a mill rat. You'll always be a mill rat. And that really stuck with me. And that made me want to get out even more. But it took a long time for me to figure out how to leave. And because, the steel mills paid well, they provided benefits, and I had a family at the time. So when it was time to do a piece for this transformation show, I kind of wanted to show in a way me, as not necessarily that rat is me, but it kind of represents workers in the mill. And I did the whole piece in a repurposed lithograph metal, which is a fancy term for old metal that's been printed on. And I may refer to it from time to time as tin, but most of it is actually steel. But and it comes from old product containers and old signage, maybe toys, etc. And so, if you look at this piece, you'll see that I have this series of smokestacks which represent that energy that comes out of the steel mill and producing all this smoke. Which, while there is still smoke and pollution in the valley, but if you grew up around here, you remember that in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s, it was even more visible, at least. I think now we more or less have air pollution that kind of sneaks up on you and kills you instead of the stuff you can actually see. But here I have the rat, and as far as why I made him blue, no real reason behind that except that I wanted him to kind of stand out and kind of pop out from the rest of the image. And actually, we did have rats in the mill. That's a great place for them. They're always picking up lunch scraps and things like that. There's a lot of dark places in the mill for them to kind of hide out. And sometimes they're even hard to see. But a blue rat, that's going to show up. Also, up in his, well, you probably can't see it from here, but if you ever get down to the library, when we actually get out again and do things and go places in person, if you take a good look at his eye, you can see that his pupil is a Steeler logo. And that happened for two reasons. One is I was just going to put in a black pupil and with some white highlights. And then I don't even know sometimes how these things enter our brains as artists. It doesn't just happen to me. I think it happens to all artists. Sometimes just a little spark of an idea comes up. And in this case, it was that I said, wait a minute, I think somewhere here in the studio I've got a logo that might be just the right size for that pupil. And at the same time, it represents, it kind of relates to steel. It has the Steelers logo, which also is based on the chemistry of steel. So, and when I worked in the mill, of course, I swear that just about everybody that I worked with in the steel mill probably followed the Steelers. And as my wife and I do now and have been doing probably for the past 15 years. So I was kind of a Steeler fan late in life. Okay. That's, I think, pretty much it. Okay, how did it get here? Well, let me talk about that. So the rat, the Shrine for a Mill Rat was on display at Contemporary Craft for about 6 or 7 months. And the original plan from Contemporary Craft was that this exhibition would travel, which means it would go to some other museums around the country. And that's a pretty common thing for museums to do. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that plan never happened. And so I got all of the artists, including myself, were contacted by Contemporary Craft at the end of the exhibition and said, you've got to come and get your work. It's not going to travel. We're sorry, but that's the way it is. So here I thought this particular piece, once the show was done at Contemporary Craft, it would be out of my life for the next 2 years. However, that wasn't to be. So me and my good friend Lamperos Seclaris, we drove up to Pittsburgh, and this thing weighs about 100 pounds, just short of 100 pounds. And we loaded it up on the truck and brought it back home, and we put it in my studio. And so for the past year, I've been working around this thing as it sits in the studio and bumping into it and everything. And I thought, where am I gonna show this? It's not like I'm a Robert Rauschenberg and I've got this whole staff of little people that go around and carry my work and hang it and all that. Everything has to be me. So I finally got the idea here the first of the year that maybe I could just give it away. But I wanted it not to go to another house or some kid's dorm room and where no one would ever see it. My hope was that I could give it to a public venue, and so where anyone could take a look at anytime, and that it would be taken care of, and basically means there'd be a light on it and it would be heated and the rain wouldn't fall on it, that type of thing. And as it turned out, three different venues contacted me, and one of those was the Ohio County Public Library, and I met with Sean, and Sean was just so interested in it. And not just because there was a Steeler pupil either, because he didn't even know about that. He didn't even know about that until the piece actually came down. I just told him once we negotiated this thing and talked it over, and then he presented it to the board of directors here at the library. I said, hey, there'll be a little surprise there. I think you might like. You'll have to look for it. And so it came here to the library. Now, it just so happened that the week after Sean picked it up at my studio, that's when all proverbial hell broke loose with the COVID-19, and so nothing could happen until just recently. And I don't know how true this is that Sean actually hung this all by himself. Right. And I think there's more to that story, but maybe Sean will tell you about it, because I wasn't here when he actually hung it. But I know that this thing had to be a bear or a rat in this case. And so now it's part of the Ohio County Library art collection. And I hope it stays with the library for like a long time, maybe forever. And what's kind of cool about it is if I want to come down and see the rat, I can come and visit it. And so can you. You can come and check it out. Well, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday when we get to the new normal, whatever the hell that is, you may have an opportunity to come down and stand at the top of the steps where I'm standing right now and take a good look at Shrine for a Mill Rat and see what it's all about. And just don't fall down the steps, okay? Because you'll be so enthralled by this thing, this beautiful piece of artwork, that it could happen. That's the only thing that I'm worried about. People say, oh my God, the rat is so beautiful. I hope I don't fall. But I think if you just stop, and don't take the first step and just look at it from a little bit of a distance, I think you'll be okay. I think you'll be safe. So I'm wondering what else we talk about. I know you would think that I would like have some big speech, some big plan here, but maybe Sean will feed me something else, or I'm not even sure how long we're supposed to go because we didn't really talk about that. And Sean, what's up?
Talk about why you do that type of art and how you're influenced.
Oh, okay, Sean, I'm going to do that. All right. So why do I work with metal? Okay, so I'm going to go back with a little story, and that is that when I was working in the mill, every year I would go to visit Three Rivers Art Festival, and basically for a young guy that doesn't know anything about the art world, going to the Three Rivers Art Festival was like this big deal. Okay. And I see these artists in their little booths, and their 10 by 10 booths, and they're selling their art. And I'm thinking, man, if I could do that, then that means I made it as an artist. And so at the time I was doing watercolors and mainly focusing on mom and pop grocery stores and old gas stations, rusting farm equipment, mail pouch barns, all that kind of nostalgia stuff, and old time architecture and things. I love the houses that were about to fall down. And I did okay with it. And I thought, okay, so maybe I can go ahead and enter Three Rivers. So I entered these some slides back, it's old school, made slides of my work. and entered, and found out about 6 weeks later that I was rejected. I didn't get in. I was really kind of bummed. But I didn't let it get to me too bad because I came back like Rocky and I said, okay, something's going to happen here. Either I'm going to have to be a kick butt watercolorist and really, really work hard for the next year. Or maybe in the back of my head, I thought, I'll go to a different media. And I had no idea what that other media would be, but it just kind of came to me. So sometime that summer after I'd been rejected, I was at a used bookstore and I saw this book called The Art of Assemblage. And it was about artists who make work from junk. And I bought this book and I love junk. I like finding things, but didn't really know what to do with them. But I seen these people making all kinds of stuff. And I said, I'm going to do that. So I started making work like that. And I was still doing watercolor, but less and less and less. The watercolors tended to subside slowly. And I entered Three Rivers Art Festival again. And guess what? Got in. Yeah. So I thought that I was like king of the art world that first year that I got there. And I think I did Three Rivers for about maybe 12, 14 years. And won a few prizes up there and sold work and started doing art festivals around the country, actually. But about, oh man, I don't know, it must have been about 12, I'm going to guess about 12 years ago that Chris and I were in a bookstore. That's when he had Borders book chain up in Pittsburgh, and she spotted this one book there by Bobby Hansen called The Fine Art of the Tin Can, and I'll never forget. She came around one of the bookshelves, book units, and she said, "Hey, babe, I think you're going to like this." And I looked at it and I said, "Oh my God, this is awesome!" It's instead of just all kinds of junk. Bobby Hansen and these different artists were focusing just on using repurposed metal. And I bought the book. And the first piece I ever made out of tin cans and repurposed metal was a giant coffee cup and saucer that I did for Chris. And I gave it to her for Christmas, that following Christmas. And it was so hard to make. I told her when she unwrapped it, and she loved it because at the time she was managing the coffee shop over on Washington Avenue, and she loved it. And my wife knows so much about coffee. She like it's unbelievable. Like she's like coffee ninja. But anyway, so we hung in the kitchen. But I told her, I said, I'm never going to make another one of these tin pieces again because I said they're too damn difficult. I said it was hard. A few months later, I was invited to do a piece for a show in Chicago. And it just so happened that it was called the Bra Show. And it so happened that this gallery in Chicago is an all-woman run gallery, and they usually only show women. But for this particular show, they were also inviting some male artists, invitation only. And I thought, what am I going to do for this bra show? And I met this director of this gallery at Penn State. And on the way home from Penn State, Chris says, well, why don't you do another tin piece? Well, the tin piece, the coffee cup, I thought, okay, it's been a few months since then. Maybe I'll try that again. So I made a giant bra. Okay. And I patterned the bra after what Madonna was kind of wearing on stage. Okay. And I made it out of tin. And it got in the show. And unlike the rat, it actually traveled for the next year and a half. It went to a couple other sites, and then it finally came back to us. And actually, the big bra hangs in our home. But that was the kind of start about how I got into this stuff. So I still do the assemblages, which is the found objects, three-dimensional objects. And but most of my work tends to be the flatter repurposed metals. But sometimes I combine the two. And in the past year or two, I've started to combine other things in with the metal, including fiber things like old pennants and sometimes maybe old toys and that kind of thing. And the downside of this stuff is that it takes up a lot of room. and it's really, really visible. But at the same time, I really like working with it. And I've got plenty of materials, but I keep looking for more. I go to flea markets looking for more, and it's like, I don't know, you get this kind of fire in your belly, and you can't. It's kind of hard to put out, so you go looking for more stuff, even though you've got stuff. And so now my prompter, Sean Duffy, just might come up with something else that I could talk about, depending on how much time we have. And I wish he had like cue cards or something. I mean, geez, even the guys on late night television, they have cards for them for the next subject. Maybe he's even going to have a card with a joke on it or something that I could do. Oh, all right. And now, what do you feed me, Sean?
Who are your influences?
Okay. So who are my influences besides Sean Duffy? Okay. Well, that changes over my lifetime. But when I was a kid, it was an artist by the name of John Nagy, and the majority of you are not going to know who that is. But John Nagy was a television artist, and he did a 15-minute program every Saturday morning. And I would get out my drawing stuff, and I would get on the floor. And this is back when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. This guy was my hero. Everybody had heroes that were either baseball players or football players. For me, it was John Nagy. And a little fact about John Nagy: when they put the first television antenna on the Empire State Building, the very first program that came out of that broadcasting antenna at the Empire State Building was, guess what? Drawing with John Nagy. How about that? Anyway, but John Nagy would do these wonderful images, and there was two things that he taught me. One was, because I used to draw all the time ever since I was a little kid, but he would show how to shade, how to give things shadow, like when the sun hits it and it casts a shadow. For me, as an 8 or 9-year-old, that blew my mind that could, that you could make things look like they had depth and that they took up space. And I loved that. And then over the years, that kind of changed. Back when I was a kid, my parents used to get Saturday Evening Post, and one of the artists that we show regularly on there, on the covers of Saturday Evening Post, was Norman Rockwell. And for a long time, I wanted to be like Norman Rockwell. I tried to paint like Norman Rockwell. I totally sucked at that. And all I was doing was being a very, very poor Norman Rockwell. I finally had to let that go. I still think he was a great artist for what he did, but I let that go. And then I get into my teenage years and I keep moving along. Oh, there was a couple guys that we used to get the Pittsburgh Press too, and I loved their work. And John Johns, he was a caricature artist, and then another guy named Nat Youngblood, which was probably one of the finest watercolors in the nation. Even though he did a lot of work for the Pittsburgh Press, he also did, and he was located in West Middletown, Pennsylvania. I found out years later. But Nat Youngblood did work for like Ford magazine. That was Ford Motor Company's magazine that they sent all their customers and put in the dealerships. And he also did some other big publications. So I love their stuff. And then as I became in my teen years and I got interested in T-shirt design and although I never owned a hot rod, I would draw these hot rods and cars and monsters and stuff. So I would basically rip off the work of guys like Stanley Mouse and Ed Big Daddy Roth. Mouse is still around. Ed Big Daddy Roth, he from Maywood, California. He passed away a few summers ago. But these guys were my heroes when I was a teenager. And I would, first of all, I would copy all their stuff, and then I would go ahead and take their stuff and then make it my own. I would kind of learn how they were doing stuff and then do my stuff. And sometimes when I look at this rat, it kind of makes me think back about those days because my logo was a rat. I kind of forgot about that. And I called myself Villa, short for my last name, Art by Villa. And when I was like around 18, I bought a couple airbrushes. I started doing T-shirts, and I would set up at festivals and do T-shirts. Whatever you wanted, I would do that. No stencils, no, just raw. You come up and said you wanted a 56 Chevy with a monster coming out of the roof. I did it for you. Okay. And I did that for several years. And then, through my life, artists that I follow kind of change, and you get a little bit more serious. And I'm inspired by people all the time. People that some of you know, people that maybe you don't. And anytime now, I think there's going to be another cue, or Sean's going to say we're done. Maybe we're not done. I don't know.
One last question.
Oh, sure. One last question.
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? No, that's not the last.
You know what? I got to tell you this real quick. He's throwing this. If I was a tree, and I hate that kind of stuff. If you were Wheeling, what part of Wheeling would you be? That kind of crap. Anyway, but I wouldn't be a sycamore. I know that because I have a big sycamore in my backyard and provides a lot of shade, but my God, all the crap comes out of it. Seeds and leaves and all that. I'm hoping Sean has the last question. It's better than that.
I do.
Okay.
Where do you get most of your inspiration? Do current events inspire you? And how has COVID impacted art?
My inspiration comes from a couple different things. One, it comes from my life, my own life, and I'll do things about my life. Not that everyone would know that, but in this case, like the rat, that comes from my own life. In addition to that, sometimes I get inspired or get ideas. I might be checking out through Kroger's and I might overhear a conversation checking out at Kroger's, and there might be some words or a line in that conversation. And the next thing you know, I'm going home and I'm making a couple of sketches in the sketchbook. I keep sketchbooks everywhere. There's one in the car, and they're all over the house, and I try to get those ideas down. And then later on, I might develop something from that. As far as how COVID-19 has impacted me, it actually, two things. One is it's actually given me more time to work. Okay, well, how's that possible? I was already working. I retired from my teaching gig. You tell somebody you retire, I almost hate that word because it sounds like, oh, so you're done with life, which is such crap. Anyway, so I try to look at this. Oh, did you retire? I go, yeah, from teaching. Okay, part of which I really, really do miss. And if any student watches this, hey, love you, dude. Believe it or not, I missed you. And plus, I had some really good coworkers out there at West Liberty, some colleagues. But so I'm working usually at least Monday through Friday in my studio almost every day. But with the COVID thing, weren't going anywhere at least those first 11, 12 weeks. Okay, you weren't even going out for pizza. You had to have it delivered. So I'm at home even more. And so that meant that those days where my wife and I might do something like go on a weekend trip or go to an antique fair or whatever, that was done. So I used that time to work in the studio too. So I was actually been creating more work so I can have more work, take up more space. Anyway, but I have done, I think I've done 3 pieces about the pandemic itself. And kind of surprising to me that just because they popped up on Instagram, people saw them. 2 of the 3 pieces sold just in the last 6 weeks. And then the third piece is actually traveled to Chautauqua, New York, here about 2 weeks ago, and it'll be for sale in a gallery up there. So it may find a new home too. But mostly it's because it gave me more time to work, and but I still wanted to get out of my life because I like breaking things up by traveling and doing that kind of stuff. And I'm glad to see that at least we're moving around a little bit. Yeah. So wait for some kind of a sign like, we have to wrap up now. And is that what that is? Okay. And Boy, I tell you what, if you're watching this right now, I'm going to promise you something. If I ever have an opportunity to do something like this again, I swear I will prepare. Okay, I will actually prepare and try to sound like I know what I'm doing. Probably some of you that are watching this right now, you're probably thinking, this guy taught at a university? You got to be kidding me. But yeah, you never know who they're going to give a job. You can blame that probably on Dave Javersack if you know who that is. He's the guy that hired me out there. So if you see Dave Javersack, just shake your head. That's where all the trouble started. Okay. And now I'm waiting to see if there's, what? Too bad questions don't come up from the public right here. That'd be really, really neat. I'd answer those. And I somehow on the screen I'm looking at, I saw Linda Cummins' name. Too bad next to there wasn't a question. Like, uh-oh. Can I read it? Have you ever done programs for kids? Yes, I did. The first series I ever did actually was it's now Gateway Community College up in Steubenville, but I did some summer programming there. It was called, are you ready for this? Making Art with Bob. Whoo! Huge hit. And then over the years, I was involved with something called the partnership program out of Steubenville through the Art Association, through the Steubenville Art Association, the city of Steubenville, or the school system up there. They were not hiring enough art teachers. And in a way, I had mixed feelings about this, but I went into the schools and I would do art programs periodically, like as a guest artist, and they didn't have an art teacher. And I thought it was good for the kids, but then I felt like I was maybe getting in the way of them also getting the pressure on to hire more art teachers. So I kind of had mixed feelings about that. And I did some art programming down at the Culture Center in Charleston. So yeah, I guess I have done off and on, and I've done some for kids at Contemporary Craft in Pittsburgh. One of the things I really enjoyed doing was up at Contemporary Craft. They did a program one time where you had a child and an adult together, and they worked together, and that was really, really nice, especially with the kind of materials that I like to work with. That worked out well. Okay, and let's see, Linda Cummins. Oh, so Linda Cummins has just suggested that I do. This is kind of cool that I'm actually reading something that I might do something to honor island rats, which I guess is a name for people who have lived on Wheeling Island. And you know what? That could very well happen. I didn't realize there was that term used for people on the island. And I'm sure that it's not negative, because a rat can be very, very positive, like our buddy here. So don't take that negative. Like if you live on an island, don't call me a rat. And besides, it came from Linda Cummins, And so Linda and I, hey, Linda, we're going to talk sometime, okay? We'll do it over lunch. We'll figure something out. I wonder if Linda ever lived on the island. I got a feeling she might have if she came up with that idea. Okay, any more questions popping up? This is kind of good now. It helps me. It doesn't look like it. Uh-oh, it doesn't look like it. Is there anybody watching this? Is there anybody I'm just curious if anybody watching this that actually knows me. 22 people. What a crowd. I hope you guys are all spaced, at least 6 foot apart. That was a joke. Okay. And wish I had some rat jokes. Okay. And see, this is why normally Sean brings in writers and poets, because they got all kind of things that they can talk about. Plus, they have their book. Like, when Mark Harshman comes down, him and his buddies, they all got poetry books. And they read them. And I'd like to read a little bit from my book. See, I got no book. Okay, I got nothing to read to you. It's all like from right here and right there. Oh, Sean's got something he's going to say.
You did a book about a mouse?
Oh, I forgot about the mouse. Me and Cheryl Harshman. That's true.
Why do you do rodents all the time?
You know what? I can't. You know what though? That was Cheryl Harshman's. That was actually her baby. That she came up with that with the mouse idea based on the mouse that's in the pocket park here in Wheeling. Oh, we're going to have the mouse. Let's see this. Okay. Yeah. Still get them at the library. Once there was a mouse, you can still get these at the library. Look at that. Once there was a mouse. Okay. And there's, yeah, I guess it was just brought up to my attention that I show a lot of or that I do a lot of rodents, and but that was Cheryl's idea, and I just did the illustrations. But I also do herons, yeah, but not bog heron. No, this is a bird. Okay, yeah, so pretty cool. Yeah, I don't see any more questions coming up. Any other questions? You want to see the animated version of this book? No more questions. I guess I've answered everything.
You've answered all the questions.
I have.
It's time to say goodbye.
Okay, we're going to say goodbye. I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay. For the 22 people, I'm probably pushing the number, but for the 22 people that actually watch this, thank you so much. It's good to have you. And I hope you'll come down and see this guy, the rat. Okay. And when you come down to see the rat, I'm not going to be in here with him. I mean, if you invite me down and maybe buy me a beer or something, I might come down here with you and look at it. But you have to come down and look at it on your own. Once we get through this whole pandemic thing. So, hey, it's been real. Have a great day. Be safe. Social distancing. Don't forget these things right here. This is, whoops. See if I can find mine. Okay, here we go. Back to the mask. Look at that, baby. Whoops, I've got mine. I got to learn how to put it on. Okay, there it is. Woo! How you like that? Huh? Later.